Welcome, everyone, to another Industry in Transition Zoom call. I'm very pleased to have Jeff Crosby, our good friend from 3xEquity, be with us today. So welcome, Jeff.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good to be here.
Could be anywhere. It's across country. This is a big deal, Jeff. You're talking to the whole world here. So Jeff, just starting out, you're a $500,000 plus producer as well as CEO of, was it $1 million? I forget what you do.
Yeah, hey, there are good $500,000 producers out there.
Jeff is like a $5 million plus producer, so he's a top industry producer, which I think gives you an interesting perspective on both what we want to talk about today, which is this survey that he did about why advisors leave and why that's relevant. I think particularly relevant because Jeff's a very large producer and he has a very successful practice. But B, he also owns 3xEquity. They're the firm that we at AdvisorHub use when you all come to us and say, hey, we want to switch firms. We want someone else. We always recommend people talk to Jeff. And they did a survey about advisor motivations as far as moving goes. So what was your motivation, Jeff, for putting the survey together?
Really to kind of continue to be the expert in the industry on advisors transitioning and to really help the advisors. So we sent out a survey to close to 20,000 advisors that have transitioned from their firm to a new firm in the past 5 years or so. So big sample size. And then the respondents was a little over 500 respondents that we built the survey from. So we felt like we had a very good database, good information. And
for people who don't know surveys, that is a good sample size. I mean, when you read a political survey, it's like, we asked 10,000 people, well, 200 responded, or, once you get over 300, that's considered a pretty good response for a survey. I'm just chiming in.
Yeah. So we were happy, and it's our second survey that we've done. So I think we've, established credibility in the industry and knowledge and being an expert in this space. And I think one of the main things or several things were learned, but one of them is that, advisors are a free agent and they're open to move. And the advisors that moved, it was a high success rate, and over 85% of them were happy that they moved. So that's and part of the question is did you move from something or did you move to something?
Push or pull.
Exactly. And they were happy in what they moved to. And they, weren't excited what they moved from. So that says a lot. Says a lot to the advisor and the broker dealer.
I also saw in the, which is interesting, in the survey that, most of the moves, although I guess it's not surprising, were from like to like. That, if you were in a BD, you move to a BD, a lot of people move from wire to wire, RIA to RIA.
Yeah, and we've got a new survey coming out as well, and we'll be interested to find out more about that with this whole pandemic and workplace environment changing. Are people going to be more open to moving from the wirehouse to the independent model or from the wirehouse to the RIA model? But yes, in the results that we had, most of the advisors moved to their current platform from.
Yeah, and in terms of wire and RIA, I mean, there was a decent percentage that moved from wire to RIA. It was infinitesimally small, the number that moved from RIA to wire. So it was still the popular choice is to go independent.
Yeah. And as an advisor, though, it's not in the survey, but I can speak to that. Hey, if we get a big drop in the market, stuff happens, you don't have that protection from the broker dealer, you got that scrutiny from the SEC, you don't have your compliance properly set up, that's a lot of heat coming your way. And where a broker dealer, really that's one of the values of a broker dealer is that it can protect the IRA. So we'll see, right? A lot of stuff's going to happen in this marketplace if we get a big market drop. We'll see a lot more advisors, I think, in transition than we have in the past. And, because advisors have made so much money this past decade, let alone this past 5 years, and it's not because they're necessarily working harder. It's, the market has risen the tide, has risen the tide.
The emperor's going to have no clothes soon, so when a lot of people in this business only know an up market, but that being said, it's been dicey with the pandemic. I mean, it's not been we had some big drops and it's been scary and it feels unsettled, but certainly there are headwinds, right? We've got taxes, we've got regulation, all these things that are sort of pending, and it just creates, I think, a level of anxiety.
Well, yeah, for the consumer and for the advisor to know how to advise their client according to their financial plan and all of that. And so I think many of the broker dealers and firms are close to having it figured out how to let their advisors work from remote locations or come into their main office or whatnot. I don't think it's as confusing for the advisor anymore as it is how to advise the consumer in what we're experiencing now.
And I was surprised to me initially. I mean, you've been in the business, too, but when that first started with, the pandemic and offices closing, I thought we were really going to see a diminution in recruiting, but it turned out to be a pretty decent year for recruits and people moving. Yeah,
for sure. And, and we have found what the survey indicated is the reason advisors move, predominantly the two reasons is higher payout and better technology. Mm-hmm. And, current firms, broker dealers, those are things that they're working on now, but that's why they moved, and they basically moved to something and from something. And, part of, the survey that we'll be doing going forward as well is, how to keep advisors. So Tony, you and I've talked about it, is that, if you and I were running a broker dealer or a firm, we probably would put our attention how to keep our advisors rather than trying to recruit in other advisors, because, the cost of losing a client is super expensive and the cost of marketing is super expensive. So maybe we need to, take care of our own house, so that we don't lose our clients and or advisors in this situation. But advisors are free agent. Companies are, there are firms out there offering 300% of trailing 12. That's on the, the employee channel. Firms are getting aggressive. Why? Because, it's profitable, bringing over an advisor, especially into a wirehouse. And, other firms partners that you have out there, there's a compelling reason to go independent or RIA as well. And it really comes back to where I feel like we're the expert, where we really help the advisor, is we don't put a square in a circle. Like, what are your needs as an advisor? What are you wanting to do? What's important to you?
Well, that's
not get caught up in the short term.
Yeah, in my mind, the whole, I think there's trouble heading for recruiters, because I think at the fertile ground has been the wirehouses, and the guys that are left there now, they're getting harder to move because they're older and they have such enormous teams. They just don't want to be, bothered with it. All the second generation folks on those teams that have, very complicated contracts, with them. The firm may have already offered a very lucrative retirement plan to the senior advisor, and the junior ones aren't really going to get anything. I just think it's going to get harder. So this consultative approach is the only thing that's going to work. You have to be able to talk as a recruiter, and no offense to recruiters, but look, you're a producer too. Not all recruiters understand the business, so they don't know how to talk it through. They find the checks, and that's what they're good at. If you're not consultative, you're going to screw things up.
Hey, the reality of it is the way 3xEquity gets paid is when we move one advisor from one firm to another. But what we try to do at 3xEquity is we try to actually encourage the advisor to stay where they are. Like, why is it better on the other side? Why is it better to move? Yeah. And we really spend a lot of time up front. And if there's a way that we can get that advisor to stay at their existing firm, we try. And, and to your point, that's the consultative approach that we take. But if that existing firm can't meet their needs for whatever reason, then that's where we have a lot of partnerships, and we try to move that person for one, in the right channel, and then two, to the right firm in that channel. And as you know, Tony, there's a lot of good opportunities out there. There's a lot of good firms. You got a lot of partnerships with your firms, that you do business with out there. But it comes down to, that individual. And we try not to get caught up in the looks, how pretty one is or handsome one is in the short term, but what is it long term for what that advisor wants to do? And if we can keep them, if we can get them to stay, we try. But that's, I think, one of the values we have is that we're a trusted source. We know the space, and when you're ready to move.
One of the things, that culture was obviously a big motivator, right? I mean, they were, and I thought it was really high, especially when obviously money's important, right? And some other things and technology, but culture was right up there with one of the top things that motivated people to move. And culture is different for everybody. I mean, on what you and I have a similar, more or less view, but it's probably not exactly the same. Everybody has kind of a different flavor, right? Of what they think is called. That's why you have to get to know your client, meaning the broker in this situation, because what does culture mean to them? It's not what it is in your mind and not what it is in my mind. Everybody has a different idea.
And Tony, as you know, if culture is not important to that advisor, then culture doesn't matter for the consideration, of that advisor. If culture matters, then for sure. And then different, firms, have different culture than others. And there's a lot of companies that you and I work with that, it's easy to say culture, but what does culture really mean? And if that's important to someone, then we dig into that. And like if you talk to CPAs, a lot of accounting practices are selling on the move. And what the CPA misses the most is that personal interaction with the client. They can do more, they have more billable revenue now, but they really do not like this new pandemic, because that's one of the values that they felt like they delivered to their clients is that interaction. That was their culture. So culture matters.
Yeah, culture matters. We talked a little bit about it, but the success of people, moving. And, my experience has been, if you're a good advisor and you love your clients, then they probably love you too. And that's all that matters. The advisor's the product, for the most part.
Yeah. And so part of the survey, that a couple of things that should be noted for those that are watching, is you should get, most of the advisors who are successful moving got 2 or more offers, but most of the advisors, like over 85% of the advisors, move the majority of their book within 60 days. And that's the credit to the firms they're moving to as well. The repapering process, the automation. If you moved 5 years ago, I can tell you it's a lot different today moving from one firm to another. So again, it reiterates the point that you're a free agent. It's not the root canal that it used to be. It's work, it's effort. But the firms have really improved the process to make it much easier, much more timely to move your book from one firm to another.
And one thing I didn't see in there that I'd be interested to see in the next survey is about legal issues and legal challenges, and what percentage prepared for that, saw that. It's a part of moving that we didn't address, it maybe for the next one it could be addressed.
Yeah, and to touch on that, it's interesting that in that one advisor who we spoke to, their franchise agreement, they understood that, but the firm that they were trying to move from had an internal memo that basically preceded the franchise agreement, and they got caught in a sticky situation. So I know you have legal representatives that you partner with AdvisorHub. We have people that we can recommend as well, but it is something you do your homework up front. You understand it, and man, it's not. You want to do it right, and that's why you've got partners, and then that's why I think someone could benefit from 3xEquity, where we can help also put them in touch with the right people to do it the right way, on the legal side. But it's important that firm, that law firm, understands the firm they're moving from, and that's key.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely attorneys who used to work at big firms that are now in private practice, or who worked with FINRA and understand how all these things work. So yeah, definitely legal counsel is key. What's the view, and what do you think the motivations are? They going to change for 2022? What do you think is going to happen for the marketplace in terms of advisors moving?
Well, the survey that we're going to be leaning towards, and more have it been in 2022, is how the firm can keep their advisors, what they have to do to provide value. So, good advisors don't mind paying a fee to their firm. They just want to get good value for what they're paying. And so, a lot of the direction is, what would it take for your firm to keep you over the next 5 years? So I do think, although, in answer to your question, I think advisors are going to be on the move. And I think it's going to continue to happen because the advisors are a free agent. They can see how short of a time frame it takes to move their book, how successful the move was. And, it's the expectations for the broker dealers and the recruiters with the advisor to make sure you get things up front, you set the right expectations, and then work with the advisors. But I'm not so sure it's going to slow down. I mean, I think we're going to see the same pace or more so. And if we get a market drop or volatility, that, then what we're going to see from our understanding is probably advisors are going to be looking to get out of the industry. What we've seen, not in the survey, but a lot of advisors who are looking to succession plan are deciding they want to stay on longer than in the past. So they want to stay on like 2 to 3 years and then transition out over a longer time frame. So, we might see that in terms of the older tenure of advisors out there. So yeah, they sell their book, but they bring in a successor or an equity partner, and then they transition out in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And the issue is on the independent side, those things are a lot more custom than they are on the the larger firm bank wire side, where it's kind of cookie cutter. You have to do the same for everybody versus independent. Your succession plan can be what you want it to be.
Yeah. And on the wirehouse side, though, I think you saw a lot more flexibility through the pandemic. They're trying to figure out ways. Advisors are now working out of their house. They don't have to go in the main office. We're up here in the Pacific Northwest technology, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook. I mean, they are giving their employees an option, to stay at home, work. Not all of them are exactly the same, but I think wirehouses are going to have to get more flexible to keep their advisors. And if they do, that increases their chances of maintaining their workforce, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think our business weathered this pandemic pretty well. I think we were pretty well positioned, with the technology that we had to make it happen. Again, my concern.
But Tony, again, if you think about it as an advisor, I mean, I've never worked so hard, but it was intentional. But the market, the tide rose, and why, we're still trying to figure out why the market went up so much. The Federal Reserve printing money, providing liquidity to banks. I mean, the advisors benefited tremendously from it. The financial services industry benefited tremendously through this pandemic. So it was a change, but it's probably more a change for the consumer than most of the advisors. It was a big change to the broker dealers, but the financial advisors benefited tremendously through this without working, really any harder. For many
there's no question. I mean, and the CEOs of the firm take credit for markets rising. And look, a lot of when you listen to these calls for these big firms, and our assets are up whatever percent. Well, that's the market doing it. It doesn't take into account advisors leaving. When the markets go down and advisors leave, you're going to have some real trouble. You know what I mean? And that's when the emperor's not going to have any clothes, because now you have all these books going down, but you're basing your entire model on fewer books of business because so many guys left. So it's a smaller sample now that you're going to have going forward. So that's a reality that our business is going to face.
And the problem with that, though, is there's a lot of smart people that have been saying the market's going to drop the past decade. It's over. So I don't know. It's going to maybe run for a while, and if it runs for a while, then maybe we won't see as much transitions. But for advisors moving, volatility, I think, will create that, and it'll create its own new set of problems. But that's where 3xEquity is positioned well, Tony. We feel, because we try to really try to be the expert.
Some guys don't want to talk to their clients when things are down, so they don't want to move. They don't want to talk to them. They just want to avoid them, and some want to leave them behind when they go.
Some are many. Yeah, I mean those. And if you don't, as the advisor, if you don't have the right book, they don't have communication, the right process, those conversations are going to be really tough. You're going to be taking bullets and knives. And that's where, from a practice management standpoint, I've been doing this a long time. You got to have a very tight process, have your clients' meetings scheduled out for the next 3 years, have really good communication with your clients, have webinars with your clients, so you are educating them what's happening in the marketplace. Most people are fair out there, but if you don't communicate to your clients, that's when you're going to have problems. So anyways, for the advisors.
I think that's important. I think it's important for guys to hear, because I think that's the difference between a good advisor and a bad advisor. And frankly, I think my opinion is if the markets, are really volatile and go down, if you haven't done that, you're going to have a hard time moving your book. Now, a firm may take you, but if they base it on assets that you're going to bring over, if I'm in some stuff that's dropping, I don't want to move it. I might end up keeping it at the big firm and let them work on me a little bit, while I'm there.
For sure. And Tony, like if you were our client on the retail side, you'd have a financial plan each year. You would have 4 scheduled meetings each year. On our internal system, you'd be scheduled out for the next 3 years. So for those advisors that are, kind of still figuring out their way a little bit, the more that you do financial planning for your client and really set them up for the long term, when the market drops, you have much greater chance of keeping your client. So that's more of a practice management. Feedback I would give advisors who are listening is try to incorporate your practice more into financial planning than just asset management, because the financial planning, I believe, is what's going to help you keep your clients when we have this market downturn.
And it's going to help you to transition. So
exactly.
I think that's great. I want to end, that's a high note. So I want to end on a high note like that. I think that's terrific. Jeff, thanks for your insights as both the CEO of 3xEquity and as an advisor. We appreciate it. And we'll see you again for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your effort out there, Tony. You and your team trying to impact the market and educate the advisors. You guys have done a great job. So thanks for the partnership.
Appreciate it, brother.